We have Dimitri Lascaris. He's coming up shortly, and we are gonna. He asked. What I've started doing is asking my guests what they want to talk about, in addition to stuff that I want to talk about. Sometimes there are very specific things that they're on their mind and so forth, and I want to let them get it out. He wants to talk about right now. The ICJ is having court, and what they're going with is this notion of basically Israel starving the Palestinian population. Israel has decided to use starvation as a tool of war. They've started to, I mean, the US is backing them in this. If you talk to any random representative from the US, they would not just advocate for the policy, but defend Israel in that policy of starvation. The food and whatnot that was apparently there has run out. And so at this point, you have people who are just hungry and thirsty with no means of getting provisions. And they are looking at that and not just, on wink and a nod. They're openly saying, this is our policy of starvation. The ICJ, yes, I get it. There's a condemnative component to it that may take months for them to make a ruling on something that is happening now. I guess it may feel good for them to make that argument in court. But the reality of it is, the ICJ does not have a military. There's not political force that can be applied. There's not any other militaries that are willing to get involved. And so whatever condemnative ruling that they come down with is just a condemnative ruling. It is wagging your finger. You're bad people for doing this. But that is effectively all they have at their disposal. I want to bring in my man, though, Dimitri Lascaris. I am deeply appreciative that you are here. He is a lawyer, journalist, and activist from Montreal, Quebec. In 2020, Dimitri ran for the leadership of the Green Party of Canada. Dimitri, welcome to the show, man. Thank you for accepting this. How you doing? You doing okay?
I'm doing okay. It's a beautiful day here in the south of Greece. We're living in a troubled world, but the beauty helps. So,
you're in Greece. Nice. Yeah. Very nice. You wanted to bring up the Palestinian issue. Now, the ICJ, I was listening to them give arguments this morning as I was coming on. Give me your take on this. Israel is not hiding the ball anymore. They're vocally admitting we are using starvation as a weapon. This is what we are effectively doing. Mm-hmm. This breaches international law. I always make the argument international law doesn't exist. So I'm not going to necessarily linger on that point. I think it's more condemnative by the fact that they're admitting that they're starving 2.1 million people, or how many other people that are left in Gaza. You are a lawyer. There is nothing that the United Nations General Assembly can do about the fact that one of its member states doesn't care about the bylaws of the entirety of the organization, including expelling Israel from the UN. Like, they don't have any powers at all. The UN, is it that the Security Council is the only body within the context of the UN that has some kind of legal authority associated with it? What's going on with this?
Well, the resolutions of the General Assembly do factor into the mix of what international law is. But then there's the question of enforcing international law. So, it's sometimes said that the General Assembly's, resolutions they're non-binding, right? Well, if what is meant by that is that the General Assembly lacks enforcement powers under the UN Charter, then that would be correct. It is the UN Security Council that has enforcement powers, and that is why, it was intentionally set up this way, Jamal, because there are 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, 3 of which are Britain, France, and the United States, the other 2 being the People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation. And the victorious powers after the Second World War, established a mechanism which basically ensured that no matter what the General Assembly did, no matter what international law may be, it would finally be up to each and every one of them acting unanimously to decide whether or not the law was actually going to be enforced. And so this is the problem. The UN General Assembly has spoken loudly and clearly that Israel is violating the basic human rights of the Palestinian people. There have been countless resolutions, and there have been a number of resolutions at the UN Security Council to that effect. But to date, the UN Security Council has not adopted meaningful enforcement measures, and there's no prospect of that happening as long as genocidal psychopaths are in charge of the British, French, and American governments.
You mentioned that Donald Trump recently, I think he was on an airplane, and they said, hey, they asked him something about Gaza. And he was like, yeah, we're pushing Israel to apparently not starve the population. Now, if you talk to Mike Huckabee, if you talk to other people in the Trump administration, they have zero issue with the starvation. And they would defend Israel as they go about starving the population. Now, Israel is saying, well, we're doing this until we get back our hostages. Hamas has been trying to get back those hostages going back for nearly a year at this point. They have blown off every deal, even the deal that the Trump administration apparently came up with in the very beginning, which seems, in retrospect, is not a deal at all. Just time for Israel to reload, bring more manpower, and then go back on a killing spree. They violated that very deal that would have gotten them back their hostages. So it doesn't seem like the issue is the hostages. The issue seems to be more, we just want to kill Palestinians. We want to take the territory. This which has always been. Why is Trump even giving voice to that right now? What is the point of him doing that?
I think there's a lot of stuff going on here. What he said precisely was that we have to get food and medicine. There's a lot of suffering going on in Gaza. We have to get food and medicine to the people of Gaza. And I've said to Netanyahu that we have to be good to Gaza. Those were the words that he used. And he was asked, how did Netanyahu react? And he said, well, who knows whether there's any truth to this, but that he reacted well. Now, what I found notable about this is, first of all, let me be very clear, Jamal. I have zero confidence, less than zero confidence in Donald Trump. The man lies as easily as he breathes. But
yes,
but the fact is, can you point to a single occasion on which he spoke this way? He didn't say anything about what wonderful beachfront property there is in Gaza. He didn't say anything in this exchange on Air Force One with these reporters about removing the people of Gaza, about the inability for them to survive in this demolition zone, as he's called it. All he talked about in this one exchange, and I think this is a first, is that there is enormous suffering amongst the civilian population. You have to get food and medicine to them. So why did he do this? Well, I think there's a lot of pressure points right now on Trump. First of all, and I'm not going to list them in any particular order, a poll just came out which showed that amazingly, despite the unrelenting tide of propaganda, pro-Israel propaganda in the United States, 53% of Americans now have a negative view of Israel. And I can't remember the percentage that had a positive view. I think it was something like 15 or 20%. And then the rest were either unknown or in the kind of middle ground. This is extraordinary, given how much pro-Israel propaganda there is in the corporate media. Secondly, Israel is on the verge of internal collapse. You have this enormous conflict taking place between the judiciary and the Shin Bet, and the military hierarchy in Israel on the one hand, and the Netanyahu regime and his genocidal psychopaths in his cabinet on the other. You have Yair Lapid saying that, the former prime minister of Israel, saying that soon we'll be in a place where there are going to be political killings in Israel, Jew killing Jew. Now, that has happened many times in the past, but the fact that he's giving voice to this concern is significant. We have a poll that just came out in Israel, which showed that 60% of Israelis believe that civil war is a serious possibility. We have the further depletion of U.S. military stocks. I'm sure that Trump is hearing about that. All these weapons that are being transferred to Ukraine and Israel over the course of the last several years is having a very negative impact on the ability of the U.S. government to wage war. Trump is looking desperately for any kind of a foreign policy win. Despite the savagery of the U.S. military in Yemen, the Yemenis bravely fight on. There's no meaningful, traffic in the Red Sea, maritime shipping traffic that serves Israel. They're continuing to fire missiles into Israel. The so-called peace negotiations relating to the Ukraine war are going nowhere fast. Trump is expressing his frustration with that. I think Trump is feeling a lot of pressure right now. And I don't think I don't believe he sees the world in the same way that Netanyahu does necessarily. Donald Trump looks out first and foremost for Donald Trump. And let's not forget that he put out that tweet that Jeffrey Sachs tweet a few months ago, in which Jeffrey Sachs described Netanyahu as a deep, dark son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think Donald Trump is feeling some heat. I don't think he cares about Palestinians. But I just ask you to imagine this, and ask people who are listening to our conversation today to imagine this. What if we start seeing, and by the way, the World Food Program just confirmed that its warehouses in Gaza are now empty.
Yeah.
It has no further stores of food. What if we start seeing masses of people standing in the streets of Gaza, skeletal, looking like human ghosts, barely able to stand up, evoking images of the worst images from the Holocaust, the concentration camps in Europe from the Holocaust? What is going to happen then? I don't think we should discount the possibility of there being a violent social explosion in some major Western countries, including the United States. I think it's remarkable how peaceful the protests have been up until now, given the horrors that we have witnessed. But if there is mass starvation, people, of course, have died in Gaza because of malnutrition and starvation, including babies. But it doesn't appear to have happened yet on a mass scale, the kind of thing we saw during the Holocaust. If that happens, and we're on the verge of that happening, you may see a social explosion in the West, and or at least in certain parts of the West. I personally believe that that is privately causing significant concern to Western leaders. And then we have this, proceeding before the International Court of Justice. Let's remember that the International Court of Justice last year ruled that Gaza is occupied territory, even though Israel insists that it is not. That means Israel, as an occupying power, has an obligation under international law, an erga omnes obligation, to ensure that the subsistence needs of the occupied population are met, and it is in fact destroying their ability to survive. So you're going to get, I would imagine, a very harsh opinion out of the International Court of Justice shortly, and all of this just adds to the growing pressure on Western governments to act. So that's clear, my read, but I could be wrong.
Right? Please continue. I'm sorry.
No, look, trying to divine what's going on in the orange head of Donald Trump is a challenging task. So I could be completely wrong. This just could be some other inane commentary coming out of his mouth, which means nothing. But it could be a sign of him feeling some serious pressure.
That's fair. I accept that. I mean, you've listed all of those things, and all of those things are pressure points that are taking place. The trade war is another one that's happening. He has no wins in regards to international politics in general, right? Whether it's the Ukraine war, whether it's the trade war, whether it's what's taking place in Israel, that looks horrible. Everybody can see it on the social media thing. You're absolutely right. I guess I've gotten so accustomed to Trump not caring, like not giving an F about pretty much anything. And so, and as you pointed out, he lies as easily as he breathes. It's like he's amoral to the truth. He says whatever he has to say. Hey, what do you think about Gaza? Yeah, it's really horrible. The suffering is horrible. Hey, what do you think about Ukraine? Oh, the suffering is horrible. Here's more weapons. Here's more bullets. Here's more guns. Here's more, bunker busters. Oh, by the way, we're threatening Iran. Like, he put a Twitter post out, by the way, of people celebrating a religious holiday in Yemen with him bombing. All of the people were civilians. And he put that out on Twitter, and it's kind of like, look at what we're doing to the Houthis. You're just killing women and children and men, celebrating a thing. He doesn't seem to care. And it's like, certainly he knows that the 70 to 80% of the weapons, the bombs, the bullets, the things that he was sending to Israel, that they were bombing civilians primarily, whether it was in Lebanon, whether it was in Syria, whether it's in Israel. He has to know that. And maybe I'm overstating what Donald Trump knows, but certainly he knows bombs kill people. I don't know. I've become very callous in what I think of him and the things that he say. I don't add value to it. But you could absolutely be correct, and I could absolutely be wrong in this. And by the way, I hope you are correct in this.
Yeah, look, I don't want you to believe to think that I have a strongly held view about this, Jamarl.
That's fair.
Like I said at the very beginning, I have boundless skepticism about Donald Trump. But what really struck me about this, I look at the overall circumstances and the fact that I haven't heard this from him before. And I think there is a prospect that the man is starting to feel the heat about West Asia. And he's also got these negotiations with Iran going on. And I'm sure that the Iranians are telling his representatives, the whole problem here is that your rabid dog Israel knows no law, refuses to accept any boundaries on its behavior. That's the real problem here. And so the accumulation of all of these pressure points might actually, not that he cares about Palestinians, I don't believe that for 1 second, but he might actually be beginning to fear about his ability to implement his agenda, because he's got no foreign policy wins and things are spinning out of control in the two major theaters of conflict, Ukraine and West Asia.
That's fair. How long does it take the ICJ to make a ruling? I thought it took several months.
In these I don't know exactly what they're going to do in these circumstances, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a ruling from them within a few weeks.
Okay.
And maybe even days. I wouldn't rule out that possibility either, because of the urgency of the situation.
Yeah, they're out of food. I mean, you're talking about 2.1 million people that are out of food. And not to mention the videos that were coming out when there was some food that was in the people. God, man, the images are just like human beings like fighting just to get nourishment. It's disturbing, like to watch. You're absolutely right. And by the way, most of those are going to be kids. The skeletons that will be roaming the streets will be children for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a rough